Okay, here's the paper, Leadership Through the Gender Lens. And this is me as I was starting to do some research, just, preparing for the class some time ago. I just decided to do some research. And you can see at the top of the paper, I've written how I found the paper. Gender, I searched on gender, 2010 through 2011, full text, refereed, added leadership, and this was one of the first things that came up, but I printed it off. Over here on the side is all the information I would need to fill out the first block of my matrix. You can see I've got the journal there. The first number is the volume number, then the next two numbers are the page numbers. Here's the year. I do have an ISBN, but I'm more interested in this DOI, this Document Object Identifier. This number is really the best thing to use to write down, because if you type that number into Google, if you can't remember where you found the article, if you type that into Google, just the Google search box, it will find this article anywhere on the internet. So that's the best way to find something if you ever lose it, okay? So I've done my matrix, my first part of my matrix, filling in who the authors are. They're listed here. So Raleigh and Fassad Hossein and Paul Berry. I've got the title there. I've got the art journal. I've got the volume. I've got the pages. I've got the year, the date that I retrieved it. I've got, yes, it's peer reviewed, and I've got the document identifier in there, okay? Now, this article, if we look at the abstract here, the first thing I'm supposed to look for on my matrix is the research question. What's the purpose of the study? Why is it different from the past? Why does it matter? And you can see here the very first statement tells you, the purpose of this article is to present a theoretical overview of what makes a leader effective using the theoretical lenses of behavioral and contingency theories and the theory of transformational leadership. Okay, that's a loaded sentence. This is saying the purpose of this article is to present a theoretical overview. In other words, this is a review of theory. So the methodology here is literature review. And that's exactly what you are going to do, a literature review. You're going to review the literature that exists. Now, you may have some theory, you may have some sampling with some actual journal articles that have sample sizes and some quantitative and qualitative analysis, but you're going to do an overview of a topic. Now, notice their overview is of what makes a leader effective using the theoretical lenses of behavioral and contingency theories and the theory of transformational leadership. These are their themes then. What this researcher has done is they've looked at articles on effective leadership, and they've seen that they fall into three basic camps: behavioral theories of leadership, contingency theories of leadership, and transformational leadership. And so what they did was they took all the studies that they looked at and they said, okay, these basically have to do with behavioral, these basically have to do with contingency, and these basically have to do with transformational. And so they're going to write a paper not on what each author said, but on these ideas of behavioral theory of leadership, contingency theory of leadership, transformational leadership. That's what you're doing. You're reviewing the literature, not the authors. And so what you need to do is, now that you've done your matrices, step back and ask yourself, what themes or ideas start to come through? We'll talk more about that in a second, and I'll show you some maps. But let's look further into this article. It says, the aim of this article is to contribute to the discussion on the above areas and to provide a bringing together of perspectives so as to facilitate future research. This is a review article. Now, notice the article's called Leadership Through a Gender Lens. And I imagine what happened was they wrote the article first just as this theoretical overview on these three themes, and it wouldn't get published. So they added the next bit. We then analyzed the theories from a gender perspective, and that's why it got published. Okay. So you may see this in some of your articles. You may see them like, okay, what's this? So they've now got a fourth theme, gender perspective. Okay, now if we go down and look at the article, so now we know its purpose is to be a theoretical overview of an effective leader and to look at that impact on gender, consequences for women. Let's go down and look at this introduction, this first paragraph here. And notice they have a quote. Leaders in the business world should aspire to be true planetary citizens. They have global responsibilities, and since their decisions affect not only the world of business, but world problems of poverty, national security, and environment. Now that's a huge quote, okay? It's a quote set out to grab your attention, and as you begin to write your rough draft, we'll talk about this next time, you ought to maybe start looking for quotes like that, things that you can put in your introduction that really impress upon the reader why it's important to continue. Notice the next sentence says, for these compelling reasons, a thorough understanding of how leadership works and what makes an effective leader is of vital concern. Now, here's the problem with this article. When I read that, I think that I'm going to get a thorough understanding of how leadership works. But if you go down the next paragraph, they give themselves an out and say, in this article, some of the theories of leadership are reviewed, and what they contribute in regard to finding the attributes of an effective leader are examined. So they set me up with this huge expectation, and now they've let me down. What I would do if I were you writing this thing is I would say, for these compelling reasons, one should look at leadership. This article will look at some of the theories of leadership. Because I wouldn't set people up to say you're going to get a thorough understanding. Okay, if I were grading this paper, I would give it a mark down for that. But you want something up front that's going to catch people's attention. And as I read the article, I marked that quote and said I might use that quote later on. Okay? Then look at this next paragraph. This is what I really want to get to in looking at this article. It says, in this article, some of the theories of leadership are reviewed and what they contribute in regard to finding the attributes of an effective leader are examined. The gender ratios of many areas of organizational life have changed in recent times, and there are now more women in positions of leadership. Adler, 1997, Kirk, 2004. So notice this author did not write, Adler found this, Kirk found that. That's not what we're looking for. They pulled out the idea that there are now more women in positions of leadership. And they found that idea in Adler's article and in Kirk's article. And they wrote the idea down and attributed it to both authors. This is called synthesis, the ability to take things and pull them together. This is the highest level of understanding, on something called Bloom's taxonomy, which looks at the levels of understanding or learning. The basic level is definition, then identification, then analysis. And then at the very top is this thing called synthesis, where you can pull ideas together. And that's what's happened. This person read Adler's article and Kirk's article and found something in common and recorded it here. This is synthesis, bringing things together. And it's on these ideas that the paper is written. That's what I want you to do. If you go over just across the page, you'll see there's another paragraph where he does this. Let's see if I can get this on the screen. Gender inequality is still present in modern day organizations. Dougherty and Manfredi, 2006, Kirk, 2004, Wolfram, 2007. And some researchers have even claimed the presence of a social contract that operates to the advantage of male workers, Cockburn, 1991. So notice what they've done. They've got 4 papers there that they have gleaned a single idea from. That gender inequality is still present. That's in the first 3. And then this 4th one that takes it a step farther and says, and there may be even a social contract that operates at the disadvantage of women. And so they pulled those 4 articles together in this single sentence. That's what I want you to look at. Now notice I put these down as possible sources. And if you were to look at my matrix that I've done on this article, you'll see down here at the bottom, I started putting down authors cited in this paper who had something to do with the numbers of women in leadership. There's Adler, there's Kirk, there's that Dougherty and Mofindi, there's that Wolfman. These are people that maybe have some, in their articles, some numbers that I might want to look up to put in my paper. This ability to pull these articles together, this is the real essence of a review of literature article. If you go on and look at this paper, you'll see they've got some more introduction where they talk about the Old Boy Network. They have some information about their plan of how they're going to proceed. We'll talk about that next week when we do the review of literature. Rough draft. We'll talk about how you should put a plan in. Then you'll notice they have these subsections. Now you don't have to have subsections in your paper, but they do help. Notice I said that they were going to write a paper on 3 basic themes: behavioral, contingency theories, and transformational leadership. And you'll notice here they have their first theme, behavioral leadership styles. And so they're going to talk about the articles that they found that deal with behavioral leadership. And they go on and talk about that and then its effect on gender. They put that in here as a subsection, what it means to women and how women work. The next one they put in is transformational theories, and that's their second theme over here. And then they talked about what that means for women up here at the top of the page. And then they go to their third theme, contingency theories, and go through what that means for women. So they've got these 3 themes: behavioral, transformation, contingency. Now notice they put them in a different order, which is kind of sloppy. You'd want them in the introduction to be in the order for the reader to anticipate them. And so that's what they've done. And then they get over here to the rest of their paper, and they add a subsection on the influence of senior managers and subordinates. This doesn't seem to fit. I wasn't expecting to see this here, but they've done it anyway. They do something with gender and culture, which I didn't expect to see either, but they stuck in here. And then they have their conclusion. So this paper has sort of got a mismatch of everything. Now over here, their final conclusion is listed. Let's see if I can tighten in on this so you can see it. The last thing they say. One key lesson from this review exercise is that it is women who possess the more desirable transformational leadership attributes that make for effective leaders in an increasingly globalized world. Okay, stop. Nowhere in this paper do they prove that women possess more of these skills than men do. There's no numbers, they've done no surveys, they've done no measurements of transformational leaders. There's nowhere in this paper does it show that. Okay, so that conclusion I think is a little bit of a stretch, and that's one of the things that you might put in your matrix. When you look at your matrix, you've got the method, this is an overview, you've got the research question and overview, you've got the method is a review of theories and how they relate to women, you've got their conclusions about what this means, and then down here on comments, I might put down here a comment that their final conclusion is not represented by the evidence in the paper. And if I include this thing in my final literature review, I might say that. I might say there's the evidence, there's some strong conclusions made in these articles, but the evidence seems to be lacking. And further research needs to be done to actually see if women do possess these skills and that kind of thing. And then down here again, I have the things I'm looking for in my from this article. One last thing to notice from this, and then we'll go directly to the information on theming. They did quote, if you looked at this first page, they did quote Kirk 2004 here and Kirk 2004 here. You can cite an author more than once because you're not looking at the author, you're looking at the ideas posed by that author. So they may show up in more than one section in your paper. Okay, next we're going to go directly into looking at some examples of mapping and how you come up with themes for your paper.